What's up, brother? How's it going?
It's good. I just pet my cat and I'm rubbing my eyes, which means my eyes are about to turn bright red.
Right on, I got you. I got a couple quick questions for you. How did you get at least so seemingly largely with a big financial worth in such a small amount of time? Did you have the right connections, the right partners, or did you take a financial risk and borrow money? How did you get to where you were at your height?
I don't know. I just had a lot of, I think, good ideas and a lot of energy, and investors believed in me, so they invested with me, and they were richly rewarded for doing so.
Okay, so and when investors listened to you and when they believed in you, what did you have to show them that they would back? Being the sound investor that you are now, would you have backed yourself?
Probably not.
Why would they trust in you at that point in your life?
I'm still learning. I think the hardest thing for investors to learn is that management is basically the most important part of any investment. And assets are important too, but management is as important or more important. And it's really hard to sort of make heads and tails of management. And for whatever reason, there was a handful of investors who believed in me, and they were right. They made huge amounts of money, and I'm happy they made that money. And sometimes there's people that will be contrarians. Like I was I think a contrarian bet in many ways. Like a lot of people said, "Oh, how do you bet on Martin Shkreli? Like you don't know if he's going to be successful. It's his first time running a company, and he's kind of weird and so forth." And some investor said, "Well, I actually think he's brilliant, and this is all going to work out." And it's worked out. So I worked hard and did my best, and my companies did really well. So, all's well that ends well. But I don't try to like overthink it, I guess.
Well, it sounds like your investors didn't overthink it either. It just sounds funny that being as young as you were and as new as you were, they were willing to take a risk on you. I don't know if you could shed a little bit more light on that. I would love to hear it.
I don't know what to tell you, man. Investors, sometimes they take a gamble. One investor, my biggest investor, he started by putting $1 million, which is an extremely small investment for him. And then he put, forget how much, but he put a lot more over the years. And he did great, and I convinced him over time that I know what I'm doing. And, part of the way you convince people you know what they're doing is you work really hard and you show them what you're made of. You show them what you're made of, and they say, I want to help. I want to not help. I want to help my portfolio by investing with this guy. Then no one else, especially if no one else is willing to give him money, I can get a good deal. And these guys got great deals on me by making that. Everyone can bet on Elon Musk, but the problem is you're not getting a good deal. Yeah, he's built a lot of companies, but you're paying exorbitant prices for pieces of his company. Whereas for me, I didn't have his track record, so the opportunity to invest with me at a low price was a good one for some of these folks.
But so how do you explain your value to somebody that has money and is willing to invest to when you're basically nothing? See, I'm a real estate investor and I'm ready to do big things. However, getting money in my hands is
well, the deal has to be good for them first and foremost. That's it. Don't think about you. You keep talking about you. It's not about you. It's about making your investors money. That's it. And
in order for me to do anything, I need to do money. I need to have money.
No, you need to show your investors deals that are really good deals, and you pray that they cut you in on it.
All right, that makes sense.
After you had raised the price and you took all the new revenue generated from the airplane, if you had just pocketed it, would you not approve of that? Would that be right to be frowned upon?
I kind of think so. There's a lot of people that are on both sides of that. There's some people that think it's, your business. It doesn't matter what you do with the money. I think that, if there are problems with if the drug is a perfect drug, then no, I think it's fine to take the money. If there's issues with the drug and the disease and education and doctors and research, you should take the money and reinvest it. You shouldn't give it away. I'm not saying give it away.
But if the patients need a better drug, I read an article about evolving bugs and superbugs and how many antibiotics we give out every day. 𝗕𝗏𝗻 is technically an antibiotic. The bugs get stronger and stronger. And right now there's only one way to kill toxoplasmosis with 𝗕𝗏𝗻. So it'd be good if if the company that was charging a lot for medicine, you sort of inherit this obligation to the community that you serve. I think it's much more appropriate if you're serving the community's needs with the money that you're getting from them. I think that's reasonable. I don't think it's right if you're making a fortune and what your customers are asking about. That's not good.
How'd you get into pharma? How'd you make that switch? How'd you convince investors?
The investors knew me as a pharma investor. Some of them did, at least. So they kind of got that. Knew I was sort of good at picking whether or not drugs worked. I was really good at that. I could kind of tell whether or not.
The old mankind, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I could tell if something was a scam or not a scam, or so that was useful. I knew so many investors from being an investor. That made it easier for people to vouch for me. I knew what they wanted to hear. I knew it was just a good fit, because so much of it requires investment, huge amounts of investment. That sort of made sense for me to be a CEO, because it just made it easier to get that investment. They knew who I was. Yeah. And some of those guys I went to war with, they were homies. What's funny is I thought some of them were ride or die. Investors they're about themselves, they're no friends. They don't, it's sort of like everyone's doing their own thing. Some people like each other, some people don't like each other, as long as they can kind of help each other out in a way that everyone wins. But no one's going to give you their shirt off their back in investing, that's for sure.
What do you think about Forex?
Well, it's not really investing, it's for traders. It's for people who, the Forex doesn't move a lot, so you have to make short-term bets, and trading is sort of inherently unpredictable. Some people are skilled at it, some people are very skilled at it, but very few are, and typically their methods are a little bit mysterious. And not grounded in kind of reason. And there's been very few people who can make money trading foreign exchange in the long run. So I'm sort of skeptical it's speculation. It's not really investing. You could argue that it's all the same, and that's just semantics. But it's hard to identify an undervalued currency, if you know what I mean. It's kind of a little silly of a concept, but it does exist. Speculation can be repeatable. People like George Soros and 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 are good examples. You really have to understand market psychology, which is its own thing. And I'm personally not as good at that. Market psychology for me has always been kind of a tricky thing to get, and I kind of prefer to ignore it. And the only way you can really do that is as a long-term kind of private equity-like investor, where in private equity there are no markets, whereas foreign exchange is maybe the most liquid market there is. So perception matters way more than reality, and to the extent you can understand the perception and how it's going to change, then you can be a very good foreign exchange trader, because there's always people who don't understand that. And there's people that don't care, really. If you're trying to exchange $1 billion of euros for $1 billion for dollars, in your Apple, you don't really care if you're going to get $1.10 or $1.09, or it doesn't matter to you. It's just the exchange. You can't control it, and you don't care. But if you're a gifted speculator, you could take advantage of that. I don't recommend it as a field, but it's certainly these days with the computerized trade errors, take advantage of you somewhat easily.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So I guess I'll go with the more serious one because I could have bigger ramifications for the rest of my life. So I'm a first-generation Muslim American, born and raised in Jersey. My parents were from Egypt. Growing up during the 9/11 era, I think I was 11 years old or so. It was pretty tough, growing up in middle school, high school. I used to always get bullied, and kids would try and take fights with me. I threw my first punch in it. I put a stop to that, right? I threw my first punch in the store. But growing up, it caused me to turn a little bit inward, right? Everyone was criticizing me about things that I really didn't have any idea on, right? Like I was told that I was violent, so I tried to look about why these people think I'm violent. Sure. And it actually brought me a lot closer to my faith, which I'm really happy about. But I also became a very strong fiscal and social conservative. And one thing I really believe in, regardless of what nationality, religion, race you are in America, if you're an American citizen, I believe that you have inalienable rights, and those are enshrined in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. So one thing I've always been a big believer in is the Second Amendment. And given all of the rhetoric, political rhetoric going on around Muslims right now, a lot of Muslims in America feel threatened. So I'm under the impression, and this is growing up around a lot of white rednecks and stuff, that, well, hey, if we want to protect ourselves from tyrannical government, we just exercise our Second Amendment. Like, we're Americans, that's the point.
Well, look, I mean, I actually come from a Muslim country called Albania. A lot of people actually assume I'm Muslim, even though I grew up in a Catholic family. How old are you?
I'm 26.
Okay. Look, I don't know what to tell you. For me, it's easy to say, I guess, but I would focus on my career and my family and try to sort of just ignore the hate or the comments or whatever. With respect to the Second Amendment, I'm no scholar on the subject. It is about as American as it gets, I guess. So, but yeah, I don't know that I'm the guy to answer the question. I mean, it's a subject that'll be there before. It was there before us. It'll be there during us, and it'll be there after us. It's like one of these things that it's pretty hard to. I like to convince people of things that are easy to convince them of.
Right. Basically, what you're saying is you're going to ruffle feathers either way. So.
Yeah, it's
not
just.
worry about it in general.
Yeah, it's just sort of easier to sort of avoid the subject. Gun ownership is a pretty hot topic right now. Our former president made a big sort of stance about gun control, some of which I don't disagree with. I don't know. It's just not my field of expertise. The reason I'm convincing and I'm a good speaker on what I talk about is because I know yeah, exactly. I really try to understand my area. So, that's my only advice on that, whether, whatever you want to advocate for. I mean, it sounds reasonable to me, but again, it's not my fight. So,
right.
Anyway.
All right, so I guess my main take.
Well, the drugs from like foreign countries like India, or like some other.
Man, you're still talking about party destinations?
No, I'm saying drugs produce, drugs from India and stuff are cheaper,
Yeah. Okay. What's your point?
Like,
what do you have?
Like the government, they say a lot of them are counterfeits, and drugs in India and drugs in China. Do you?
I don't think they're counterfeit. They're just
Counterfeit in what sense? Counterfeit in what sense they actually work. So I mean, if you mean.
Yeah. It's a good question. Yeah, look, I mean, Indian and Chinese drugs are definitely cheaper. The labor's cheaper. The problem is that there's been, especially in India recently, a large number of manufacturing facilities that have failed inspection by FDA. So in one such facility, they actually fraudulently filled out the specifications for the drugs. I don't need you to explain how dangerous that is. In one facility, they actually found a puddle of urine on the floor of what was supposed to be a sterile facility.
and other such dilemmas that some of the Indian drug makers have done. Now, that's not to say that there are some wonderful Indian drug companies. 𝗠𝗏, for instance, I think is a great one. But a lot of the smaller Indian drug companies have had a lot of manufacturing violations, and the US FDA is a little concerned about some of the findings in India. Remember, this is a continent that routinely has temperatures over 100 degrees, is not known for its forthrightness and has somewhat of a tendency to have some fraudulent operations. It's a country that's...
Its caste system.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I actually tried to study the history of Indian fraud, and that's not to say that it's any more or any less than other countries, but what you're saying, Young, is true. There tends to be this unwillingness to disappoint in India, so they'd rather lie and defraud than disappoint. That's a common theme in fraud. The fraudster is usually so scared of admitting that he failed that he lies to make up his failure. And in India, that's somewhat of a pronounced theme. Some Indians have told me that that's a cultural concept. Now, having said that, there are a lot of wonderful Indian drug companies, and I don't mean to disparage them at all, but that's sort of what's gone on. The counterfeit drug trade is its own mess, and I don't have any insight into that, but certainly India's had some trouble in the last, say, 12 to 18 months in pharma.
My question to that is, who inspects this? Is it like an international inspection body, or is it like
it's
FDA or
Food and Drug Administration?
Who inspects these Indian companies and stuff? Like, is it like
drugs that cross our border are inspected by the FDA.
Okay, but there's no like international body.
Each territory has its own inspectors. So the EMEA inspects drugs that cross European borders. The WHO inspects drugs that are sold to the WHO. So each one has its own territorial jurisdiction.
Have you ever seen Dallas Buyers Club?
Sorry?
Have you ever seen Dallas Buyers Club?
Yeah, good movie.
So like, for like people to get cheap like medication here, they could go to Mexico or Canada and
the problem is they need to find a physician in that territory. And there's a lot of physicians who are uncomfortable in Brazil saying, "Oh, it's an American patient who lives in Texas that I'm supposed to take care of." Why would you do that if you're a Brazilian or a Mexican? Let's say you went to Brazil. They'd look at you and say, "What? I'm not going to take care of you. You're an American. Go find an American doctor."
I mean, but for enough money.
No, it's an ethical thing. I mean, you can't take care of a patient who has a serious illness from afar. I mean, you need to see that patient. And that doctor is going to say, "Well, where do you live?" "Oh, I don't take care of foreign patients." So there's liability. I mean, doctors don't like losing their license. But yeah, there's a lot of drugs out there, and a lot of them get thrown away. I mean, you could see the Pfizer one. I mean, that was just sitting there. You could have bought it from them and said, "Look, you guys aren't doing anything with this. Let us run with it in oncology." So there's so many opportunities like that. I mean, you see that they're thinking something totally different, right? They were thinking 100% that they would move into pain. So one company's trash is another company's treasure. And Loxo, and it's funny about Loxo is that they got it from 𝗿𝗏. So 𝗿𝗏 didn't want it either. Nobody wanted these track drugs. Now they're one of the most exciting areas. They got to look at the patent life as well. Well, it does and it doesn't, because if you want to dose the first 7 patients, these are patients that are pretty sick. You can probably you license the drug for $1 million from Pfizer, a little bit of begging, and then you have to make the medicine. So hopefully when you're buying it for $1 million, it comes with some medicine already made. But often it's expired, because by the time you license it, they say, well, the last batch we made was in 2014. The FDA wants you to make new batches. So the batches will cost you another $1 million. And then you got to find a trial site that'll do the trial in 10 or so patients. You'll see if the drug works or not. I mean, they saw it with 7 patients. And if you get that kind of a response, you're off to the races. Then you can raise money for, $200 million valuation, raise $50 million. You sell 20%-ish of the company, and you got all the money you need to do the pivotal clinical trial. and it'll cost you $3 million. You still own 75% of the company. It's probably worth at least $200 million. You turn $3 million into 150. You got to be sure you're right. But if you build a bigger company, you can make those bets. You know, spread those bets around, make $3 or $4 $10 million bets a year. So anyway, you know, we'll look for the next. I never trusted oncology because this is assuming you get it right. There's so many proteins. There's so many things to inhibit. You know, getting that cancer gold mine isn't not easy. There's a lot of these that don't work. You get one response out of 10. Now what? You start thinking, oh, well, I'll just find that kind of patient. Maybe I'll always get responses, and it doesn't work either. So it's not as easy as it seems. You know, these guys got it right, but for every Loxo, there's about 10 or 20, Noxos.